Go read your Bible.
Some speakers show up here now, and because this is New Hampshire and we do things our way, I'm going to be introducing the introducer of the great Muppet Man representing himself, Seth Cohn. And so, who's introducing Seth Cohn but the wonderful, wonderfully yellow-dressed Sabrielle.
It is my privilege to introduce Representative Seth Cohn. Seth is a great man, a fantastic friend, and a positive influence in the state legislature. His proudest accomplishment over the past 2 years is introducing an ultimately successful bill that required all state government departments to use open source software and open source code on all their websites. His pro-transparency legislation has since become a model bill for other state legislatures. And when the bill to repeal gay marriage was introduced, Seth proposed a satirical amendment to also ban two left-handed people from getting married, which garnered national press. And no, you can't convince him to run again. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the fabulous Seth Cohn. Woo!
Well, thank you. So, as Sabrielle mentioned, over the last 2 years, an attempt to repeal same-sex marriage was brought forward here in New Hampshire. And I'm happy to report that that attempt failed. Woo! So the final vote was 211 against and 116 for the repeal. 92 Democrats and 119 Republicans voted against that repeal. There were more Republicans voting against it than for it. So let's give a shout out to everybody who said no, same-sex marriage is here to stay in New Hampshire. So yeah, I put an amendment together that basically pointed out the absurdity of doing this. I said, well, no left-handed person can marry another left-handed person. That makes about as much sense. And I wanted to speak on that on the House floor, and they said, no, you can't do that. You're embarrassing us. You're making fun of us. And I said, I have a serious speech to give. It will really make the point. And they said, no, we don't want serious points made. This is government. So I'm going to take the opportunity to give the speech I never got to give. So hopefully you'll indulge me. Pretend I'm wearing a suit. Pretend that you're the House of Representatives that has to make this serious decision to take people's rights away. And let's see if we can all put our imagination hats on. And this is the speech as I would have given it, roughly. So all this week I've had people telling me that there was no need to actually introduce this amendment. I'd made my point. The House was no place for humor. This was a serious issue. I should just not introduce it, move on. And I said, no, this is a serious issue and I need to bring this forward because I have points to make that have not been made. So the proponents of this repeal defended it on a number of different grounds. Religious arguments, cultural tradition, family and children. They talked about the New Hampshire Constitution. And I was taught that until you walk a mile in someone else's shoes, you can't understand them. So I attempted to put myself in someone else's shoes and see what happened. So many people have compared being left-handed to being homosexual. It's been claimed by experts that there's a great similarity between the traits of sexual orientation and the traits of being handed, left or right. And maybe they're both genetics, maybe they're not, maybe it's a choice. Is it hormonal influence in the womb? Is it environmental? We don't know. Those questions are still unanswered. So the evidence is uncertain in both cases, and so for me that was a great place to start. I could see that there was a similarity, because I'm here today not just as a representative, but I have to out myself. I'm left-handed. So here's something that I know about. I know what the world is like being left-handed, and my experiences and the discrimination that I faced as a left-handed person. What kind of discrimination? Well, let's look at all these different issues. So let's look at the religious aspect. The Bible's really clear on this. There's over 100 verses talking about how right-handed people are good, and they're praising right-handedness. And there's over 25 verses talking about how the left-handed is wrong. So does God favor does he hate left-handed people? Does he favor right-handed people? I don't know. This is probably not the right place in the State House to argue matters of religion, but if the sheep are gathered on the right and are entering into heaven, and the goats are being put on the left and are going into hell, that's really hard to ignore. Is that the biblical message? So the Catholic Church certainly discriminated against lefties. And we've all heard of the nuns who tied kids' hands behind their back to ensure that they would be right-handed. In fact, it's hard to find people under a certain age who are comfortable being left-handed because discrimination was so clear and so cultural that most people who were left-handed were discriminated against if they grew up during that time period. So that brings me to the second issue, which is tradition and culture. So I've heard repeatedly, 3,000 years of tradition. Well, let's look at language around the world, because in left-handedness, every single language out there, left means wrong, it means bad. In Anglo-Saxon, left means weak. In Latin, the word sinister, well, we all know what sinister is, right? In French, it's gauche. We've all heard somebody be, well, you're gauche. That's not a good thing. Or maladroit. I mean, those words, we have negative meanings on all of those. And it's not just those languages. We go on, we go Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, German, Irish, Welsh, Swedish, Hungarian, Polish, Chinese, Korean. There is not one language out there in which left has positive meanings. It always means something bad. So, and in fact, our traditions in Ghana, if you gesture with your left hand, that's taboo. In some Asian countries, to pick up a fork or a spoon with your left hand is the ultimate in bad manners. So, the world's traditions are pretty clear. Being left-handed is wrong. Well, what about children and family? That's always what we hear. Oh, it's about the children and the family. Well, is being left-handed a handicap? Speaking as a left-handed person, yes. It's harder to be left-handed. Our writing suffers. We learn to cope with being being left-handed in a right-leaning world. So we need special versions of tools like can openers and scissors and musical instruments and power tools, where we just learn to make do and just pretend to be right, because this is a right-leaning world. Do left-handed parents love their children any less? No. No more than gay parents love their children any less. So finally, the New Hampshire Constitution. Does it protect left-handedness? No. Actually, Article 2 lists the prohibitions for discrimination. Handedness isn't listed. Race, creed, sex is listed. You're not allowed to discriminate on the basis of someone's gender, but you certainly can discriminate against them on the basis of which hand they use. So, our Constitution, it talks about rights. It doesn't talk about lefts. So, it's clear for all those stated reasons that being left-handed is certainly being part of an oppressed minority. So why would I bring forward an amendment that seeks to oppress left-handed people? Why would I do that? Because it's important to stand up in solidarity for other minorities. Because I know what it's like to walk in their shoes. The number of similarities between homosexuality and left-handedness are close enough, and there's even some evidence that maybe they're related. So if I find this repeal offensive, if I find it oppressive, if I find it distasteful, I could just vote against it. I could even get up and speak against it. But I'm going to stand here and I'm going to say, if you can do it to them, then you better do it to me too. And you better do it to me first. So this was not about making a joke. This was not about making fun of a bad idea. This was about standing up and saying, there but for the grace of God go I. And I'm going to make clear that this is about their rights. And if I want to protect their rights, then I'm certainly going to go and put up my left's. So I hope you will all support me in defending marriage equality here in the state of New Hampshire. Send the message loud and clear that oppression of one minority is the same as oppression of another minority, and that solidarity requires we all stand up together and say no, and ensure that everyone's rights are protected, including the left's. So thank you very much. So I just want to finish by pointing out that, you know, we have the right and the left in this country, and people think that that's all there is. And I will point out that there's a group that's in back there that they've got a booth, the Libertarians. The Libertarians are consistent. They are the ones that have never changed their position. They are for equality for everybody. They believe that everybody is equal. When you talk about the people that have stood up for LGBT rights, the Libertarians have a track record like nobody else's business. So if you haven't gone and talked to them, please go do so, because if you want to talk about a group that has gone and stood up for rights and for lefts, they're the group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Seth. You know, I'm gonna have a marriage between my right hand and left hand and give you a cheer. Look at that. Here, here. You're gonna preside over that marriage. All right, so now we're gonna have some poets. And first up is the wonderful, the fantastic, the coolest, the perfect. I can go on. I really can. Matt Richards.
Hi everyone, my name's Matt Richards. I'm from Slam Free or Die. It's a poetry reading here in Manchester, New Hampshire, and I'm a slam poet, and I'm here to do some poems for you. So I've always been like a big supporter of honoring history and like our past, and I usually start with the poem of of a poet who's better than I am. And last night I messaged this poet named Donez Smith out of Chicago, and I asked him if I could do this poem, and he said he was really excited about it. How many of you are familiar with Bayard Rustin? So the thing is, Bayard Rustin was one of the early civil rights leaders in the country, and he pretty much taught Martin Luther King everything he knew. He was like in the first march on Washington, but he got arrested for being gay, and history doesn't remember him like Martin Luther King or Malcolm X because because he was gay, and I think it's really important to remember him. So this is from Donez Smith. This is a poem for Bayard Rustin, and it starts out with a quote from him. "We are all one, and if we don't know it, we will learn it the hard way." Bayard Rustin, leader of the March on Washington. Skin of gospel, truthful eyes like gray clouds that threaten to soak. You are a rainy Sunday in our history, something holy, necessary, giant, but neglected and cursed for brighter days. How could they push you into the back of the pews, more treacherous than closets, seated you someplace to be unseen, unheard, needed your brain, your soul, your fire. Your face was not welcome, kept in a box somewhere, no key to speak of. You were always trying to escape something, forever trying to free someone, eternally the prisoner. God imagined you into night, but King and his court fashioned you a jester, clown, queer. Your skin the right color, your lover the wrong sin. Men, your capturer and your release. You wanted to free them. You just wanted to free them to work, to love, to grow, to know life unlimited, to taste freedom unfiltered. You dreamed America beautiful, but black boys who couldn't get it right were nightmares. Bayard Rustin, this movement was not for you. Your skin, yes, but your heart, that's a stretch. Bayard, They were ashamed of you. No matter what you spoke into existence or what you breathed into life, your lips were contradictions. You kissed men. This was a movement of the church, amen. How could you lead them? What was your agenda? What would it look like if the leader of a black movement turned out to be gay? You're humbly worked in the shadows. You were a risk, a danger to the cause too priceless to give up. They needed you. King needed you in his court, needed your fire, or else everything might have been burned. You kept the movement from being ciders. Cedar-skinned angel, what was your gospel? What song did you sing to keep moving? What was your freedom song? What kept your company in the shadows? Bayard, did you ever tire of the beatings? You were always fighting for someone. Someone was always there with fists or nightsticks. Something the lick of enemies hurt less. Sometimes the licks of enemies hurt less than the tongues of friends. But did you ever lash back? Did you ever did you ever clench your hands? Did you ever throw that fist? How did you keep calm when they were surrounding you with nooses and torches? Ready, everything around you in flames. And they were calling you flaming and all